Like last year, Samsung has introduced 3 smartphones under this year's S series as well, the S21, S21 Plus and the S21 Ultra. Well, I've already made a detailed review about the S21 Ultra, so be sure to check it out from a card right here. Anyways, this video is going to be about the S21 and S21 Plus. Although the S21 Ultra steals the spotlight with its S Pen support, better cameras and more, the standard S21 and S21 Plus are not that far behind either. In fact, these phones offer a similar experience at a much lower asking price. Well, the keyword here is similar, but regardless of what S-series phone you go for this year, barring a couple of markets like the US and China, you are going to get a much improved Exynos 2100 chipset. Forget the new design or the cameras, this is the most exciting upgrade Samsung has introduced in its latest flagship by finally listening to the complaints of its customers. In real life too, the Exynos 2100 feels so much faster than last year's Exynos 990. Having used the Note 20 Ultra for so long, I could instantly feel the difference. The animations feel faster and working around the phone feels swifter. So I have to say that the performance upgrade from this newer chipset has really impressed me. Yet the question still remains, is this Exynos chipset on par with the Snapdragon version of the S21 series? Well, for that we will have to wait and see. But what I can say right now is that this new Exynos 2100 chipset does not have any kind of heating or throttling issues. Previously with the S20 and S20 Plus, well, both the phones would get warm just minutes into recording 4K videos or playing games, which is no longer the case with the S21 series, so that's great. However, I am not particularly impressed with the allowed max settings in PUBG Mobile gaming. The highest setting you can reach is smooth graphics with the frame rate set to extreme, whereas the iPhone 12 maxes out at HDR graphics and extreme frame rates. And even if we keep the iPhones aside for a moment, the fact that it is not optimized for 90 FPS gameplay like the OnePlus 8 series is highly disappointing. That being said, other demanding games such as Call of Duty Mobile and Genshin Impact run similarly on the S21 and the iPhone 12 series. So maybe Samsung can better optimize popular titles like PUBG to tap into the gaming arena as well. Now, moving on to the display side of things, Samsung has scaled down the QHD resolution from last year's S20 series to just FHD on the S21 and S21 Plus. But you still get the adaptive 120Hz refresh rate that can switch between screen refresh rate depending on the content. As usual, it's a dynamic AMOLED panel with excellent brightness levels, colors and contrast. Noticeably, there are no curves here like the S20 Plus or the S21 Ultra, and Samsung has rather opted for a flat panel on these devices. Personally, I do not have any problems with the minimal curves on the S20 Plus, but I don't mind this flat display either. Like the S21 Ultra, the front and the back of the S21 Plus is now protected by Corning's Gorilla Glass Victus, while the regular S21 gets the Victus treatment only on the front as it comes with a polycarbonate back. With this, the S21 Plus feels much better on the hands, whereas the plastic back on the S21 feels exactly like the S20 FE. So yeah, not so premium design on the S21. But the S21 shines when it comes to ergonomics and one-handed usage. The S21 Plus, although a little bigger, is still really comfortable on the hands too, although the smaller form factor and lightweight build of the S21 is something you might want over the S21 Plus and the S21 Ultra. However, with small design comes small battery, and the biggest issue with the S21 is that it features a moderate 4000 mAh cell, while the S21 Plus comes with a beefier 4800 mAh battery. Hence, the endurance on the S21 Plus is far better than the S21. Using both phones side by side, I got almost a full day's usage on the S21 Plus, while the regular S21 dies by the evening. And because the display on the S21 and S21 Plus only have a dynamic range of 48 to 120 Hz, unlike the S21 Ultra that can shift between 10 to 120 Hz depending on what activity you do on your phone, the relative endurance is better on the S21 Ultra. As for charging speeds, nothing has changed except for the fact that you don't get a power brick inside the box anymore. With the 25-watt charger that you get for like $25, charging is not as wickedly fast as 65-watt chargers you get on Chinese phones. Still, it is faster than the 20-watt charger on the iPhone 12 series. And one more thing, this year I was really hoping that Samsung would bring something better in terms of wireless charging, seeing how Apple is trying to shift focus to MagSafe and Xiaomi just brought out a 50-watt wireless charging support on the Mi 11. To my disappointment, Samsung is still stuck with the 15-watt wireless charging. Now coming back to the design again, the company has changed things by quite a bit in the S21 series. The camera sensors have been neatly placed inside this module that now looks like as if it's a part of the side frame itself. Honestly, looking at the render images initially, I was a little skeptical. But I've got to give credit to Samsung. It looks quite good in the flesh. Onto the software side of things, both the S21 and S21 Plus shipped with the latest version of One UI, the One UI 3.1 based on Android 11. This time, with the new Exynos 2100 integration, Samsung's Android skin feels more optimized than ever. And it's impressive how with every generation, the company is able to make One UI better for one-handed usage. If you have watched my review of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, I have talked about how it is extremely uncomfortable to use and how the iOS 14 absolutely lacks optimization for one-handed usage. Well, with Samsung devices, it's exactly the opposite. So on the usability part, I am quite happy with these devices. Also, swiping left from the home screen now takes you to the Google Discover cards, which is something I have been wanting for years. The in-display fingerprint sensor on the S21 series has improved a lot in performance as well. It's still Samsung's proprietary ultrasonic technology, but this time it boasts Qualcomm's 3D Sonic Sensor Gen 2, and Samsung claims that this sensor is 1.7 times larger and performs 50% faster scanning in comparison to the previous ones. During my test, I could not really tell if this version of Samsung's ultrasonic sensors indeed has a larger sensing area, but it is definitely a lot faster, and I've even noticed that the registration time has reduced slightly too. The S21 and S21 Plus feature similar camera hardware as last year. While the 12-megapixel ultra-wide-angle lens is the new Sony IMX563 sensor, instead of the S5K2LA on the S20 series, these phones retain the same 12-megapixel Sony IMX555 primary lens and the 64-megapixel telephoto lens. And since both the S21 and S21 Plus have the exact same camera setup and Exynos 2100's ISP, the photos turn out the same too. I was doubtful that given the lower price tag of the S21, it would sort of have inferior camera performance compared to the S21 Plus, but that's not the case. I also checked how the S21's cameras fared against the S21 Ultra and found differences mostly in color tone in the primary and wide-angle cameras. The Ultra's pictures have a subtle and a natural color tone, while sometimes the S21 Plus slightly saturates the images more. But the big difference lies in the nighttime performance, where the S21 Ultra is able to produce less grainy and sharper images than the S21 Plus. Definitely, the newer and bigger 108-megapixel sensor has played a huge role in this. About the portraits, well, here too the S21 Ultra can produce fuller colors than the S21 Plus. But everything else is almost the same, and because colors are mostly a matter of personal preference, I will leave the judgment to you guys. 3x zoom telephoto images look almost similar from both the devices despite featuring different sensors. But when clicking 3x videos, the difference is apparent where the Ultra is the clear winner. However, you don't get a 10x periscope lens like with the S21 Ultra, so when it comes to zoom shots, the Ultra is the clear winner. And we all know how last year's S20 Ultra grabbed headlines because of its autofocus issue. This year though, with the inclusion of the laser autofocus sensor, that problem has been solved to a great extent. Yet, at times, because of the larger focal length of the 108-megapixel sensor, while clicking close-up shots, the camera does struggle for a second to lock focus, which is not a problem with the S21 Plus. Now, I did not stop the camera comparison just yet because a small portion of me was still curious about how much improvement the S21 series cameras have over last year's S20 series. After going through the images, I found that the S21 did not have that extra pop in colors like the S20, which makes it look somewhat close to natural. It also has a good level of contrast that do not overcompensate for the shadow details. However, the portraits from the S21 have this unusual yellow tone that makes them look unnatural. Comparing the nighttime images, I found S21 Plus to have slightly better sharpness than the S20 Plus in the normal mode. Wide-angle images from the normal mode, on the other hand, were better on the S21 Plus. As you can see, the ultra-wide-angle nighttime images from the S21 Plus has a lot more noticeable grains than the S20 Plus. But turning on the night mode, you can see the image signal processor of the Exynos 2100 bringing in more details and better exposure maintenance. And it's almost certain that we will see a few more updates from Samsung in the S21 series to make the cameras even better. As for selfies, the S21 and S21 Plus feature the same 10 megapixel camera up front like last year. Although most of the things look almost identical, the S21 preserves the shadow details better and has a slightly better dynamic range. But if you are someone who likes more contrast in pictures, then I guess you will favor the selfies from the S20 Plus. In terms of videos, like with the S20 Plus, you get up to 8K 24fps video recording here as well. Although the 8K videos this time are slightly better stabilized, it's nowhere near the 4K 60fps footage is, as this one is not only better stabilized but gives vibrant colors with excellent dynamic range too. However, I was hoping that this time Samsung would include a 4K 60fps video recording option from the ultra-wide-angle sensor, but seems like this is reserved for some other Samsung flagship of the future. Cameras aside, both the S21 and S21 Plus feature the same stereo speaker setup tuned by AKG, and these are honestly some of the best speakers on a smartphone. The audio reproduction has good details and sounds really balanced. Having used all three devices of the S21 series for a week now, I think Samsung has done a great job with the pricing as well as the features to distinguish these three models. But I still think if you're planning on getting one of the S series phones this year, it should definitely be the S21 Ultra. It is just a much better phone. That is, if you don't mind the relatively bigger form factor. I still recommend the S21 and S21 Plus, but at this price segment, I think the upcoming Mi 11 and the OnePlus 9 series is going to give them a tough competition. And not to forget that Samsung will be launching the S21 Fan Edition in some 3 to 6 months' time, which is bound to be a much better value than these two phones. So that was all for our in-depth review of the Galaxy S21 and S21 Plus. We are planning to come up with an in-depth review of the Exynos 2100 chipset as well. So for that, stay tuned to Gadget Byte and do not forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Till then, I'm Pratima and I'll see you in the next video.